If you've ever been underestimated, judged by your age, or dismissed because of your gender, you know how it feels when others assume you don't belong. But sometimes, it only takes one moment to remind them they were wrong. Watch how this quiet air traffic controller proved that some battles aren't fought in the skies, they're won in the tower. Make sure to like and subscribe if you believe the power of patience and perseverance can turn any moment into a turning point. It was a quiet morning at the airfield, but for Samantha Carter, it felt like the calm before a storm. Freshly stationed at the high-security military base, she was determined to prove herself. In her late 20s, she had earned her spot through grueling hours, intense training, and an unshakable will to succeed. Yet, in a room full of experienced senior controllers who had been in the game for decades, Sam couldn't help but feel like she was invisible. Just another young face with too much hope and too little time to prove it. She walked into the tower that morning, a little earlier than usual, to set up her station and get ahead of the day's rush. The hum of the radio systems and the soft clatter of keys filled the room, but the heavy stares from the senior controllers didn't. They were used to a very different kind of leadership. Men with sharp lines in their uniforms, older, stronger, voices that commanded attention. And then there was her, Sam Carter, young and untested. As she began her shift, she overheard the conversations. They were routine, mostly about traffic patterns, landing schedules, and airspace reservations. Nothing out of the ordinary. But the tone, oh, the tone. One of the senior controllers, Lieutenant Davis, was talking in hushed tones about the next round of VIP flights. Sam, who had been waiting for something important to happen, recognized the familiar call sign on the flight list, Blackbird Alpha, a high-priority military jet, known for transporting government officials and classified materials. Sam's pulse quickened. This was her moment, the moment to prove that her skills were sharper than her critics realized. But before she could speak up, Lieutenant Davis scoffed, throwing an insult into the air like it was just another passing wind. "She's probably not even trained to handle a Blackbird," Davis said loudly, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Let's give it to someone who actually knows what they're doing." He turned to another senior controller, nodding in agreement as they both chuckled. Sam didn't flinch. She had learned early on to keep her head down and focus, to not let the doubts of others interfere with the job at hand. But it didn't make the words any less hurtful. She had worked long and hard to get here, but to them, she was just another young rookie who couldn't handle the pressure. She forced a deep breath and turned back to her radar screen, trying to ignore the snickers that followed her every move. After all, it wasn't the first time she had been belittled. At every new post, every new assignment, she had been reminded that in this field, youth was a liability, and gender, well, that was just another layer of doubt people piled on top. But Sam Carter wasn't here to prove anyone wrong. She was here to do her job, and do it better than anyone else. Minutes passed, and the chatter continued. But then, the word she had been waiting for came through the comms. Blackbird Alpha requesting immediate clearance. Her hands tightened around the controls, and for a brief moment, the noise around her fell away. This wasn't a routine flight. This wasn't something to be passed off. This was her chance to step up. Sam didn't hesitate. She keyed into the radio, trying to steady her voice as she spoke. "Blackbird Alpha, this is Airfield 23. You are cleared for immediate priority landing. Over." For a split second, there was nothing but silence. Then, the unmistakable voice of ground control cut through the air, booming over her radio. "Blackbird Alpha, this is ground control. Immediate priority clearance approved. You are cleared to land. Over." Sam's heart skipped a beat. It was done. She had given the clearance, and they had responded. Ground control had cleared the flight. But in the tower, the room was still filled with the sharp sting of disbelief and silence. Lieutenant Davis and the others didn't immediately respond. They didn't congratulate her. Instead, they shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances. There was no "good job" or "well done." They didn't even acknowledge it. But Sam didn't need that. She knew what she had done. She had proven to herself, and to them, that she had what it took to be more than just a shadow in the corner of the room. As the Blackbird Alpha jet descended, the tower filled with a quiet buzz of activity. Sam calmly tracked its landing, her eyes flicking between radar and the runway. The aircraft touched down smoothly, as if her commands had set everything into perfect motion. For a fleeting moment, It felt like time itself had slowed down, like she was finally in control of the wheel, steering the ship that was once just a dream. When the jet was safely parked, the tension in the tower shifted. Lieutenant Davis stood up first, though he didn't say anything. Instead, he gave her a quick glance, one that was far more respectful than any word of apology. The rest of the senior controllers followed suit. They didn't need to speak. They had seen what Sam could do. But Sam wasn't looking for their approval. She wasn't waiting for their applause. She had done what she knew she was capable of. She had made the call when it counted, and it had paid off. The only thing left was to move forward, to prove that this was just the beginning of what she could do. The next few hours felt like a blur. Sam had expected to be treated like a hero. At least, she hoped for a little recognition for making the right call under pressure. But as the day continued, the airfield's atmosphere quickly shifted from uneasy silence to the familiar hum of routine. It was as though Blackbird Alpha had never even landed, and Sam, too, had faded back into the background. Just another controller doing her job. The senior officers made a half-hearted attempt at praising her, their voices carrying that same condescending tone, as if they were humoring her more than acknowledging her skill. Lieutenant Davis gave her an awkward pat on the back as he muttered, "Not bad, kid. But let's not get carried away." It wasn't much, but Sam knew better than to expect much. That was how they worked: dismiss, mock, and then, if forced, acknowledge. It wasn't the respect she craved, but it was enough for now. But it wasn't just the senior controllers who didn't quite believe in her. The younger cadets on the base, the ones who were still fresh to the military world, looked at her as though she were some kind of novelty. Impressive, yes, but still the subject of whispers and skepticism. The true test came when the next unexpected radio transmission cracked through the airwaves, shattering the dull rhythm of the day. Sam had just finished clearing a routine flight when the call came through. Airfield 23, this is Blackbird Alpha. We're experiencing a malfunction. Requesting emergency rerouting to the emergency landing strip. Over. Sam froze. Blackbird Alpha? Again? Something didn't feel right. She quickly scanned the radar, double-checking the plane's coordinates, its airspeed, and its trajectory. This wasn't the usual pattern of malfunction, and it didn't match up with any standard emergency protocol. In fact, Blackbird Alpha was approaching from the wrong side of the base. It was almost as if it had deviated purposefully. Blackbird Alpha, this is Airfield 23, Sam responded, trying to mask the unease creeping into her voice. You're cleared to reroute. Heading 270 degrees. Please confirm emergency landing procedure. Over. But there was something odd about the way the pilot responded this time. His voice was clipped, mechanical, more urgent than she had ever heard before. Airfield 23, this is Blackbird Alpha. We have classified materials aboard. Immediate clearance required. Over. Sam's heart pounded in her chest. The last time a pilot had mentioned classified materials, it was a completely different call. She hesitated for just a second, looking around the room. Everyone seemed busy with their own assignments, but Sam could feel the weight of this moment. There was no time to hesitate. Copy that, Blackbird Alpha. You're cleared for immediate landing. Proceed on your current course. Over. Her words felt like they had torn through the air, far more important than the ones she'd spoken earlier. There was a heaviness in her gut as she keyed the mic, and it was only then that she realized. She was making a decision that could very well affect more than just the base. But before she could process it, a second message crackled through the comms. Airfield 23, be advised, this is a high-priority situation. We are going dark. No communication will be available until after the landing. Clear the airspace. Over. Suddenly, it all clicked. Something was wrong. This wasn't just a malfunction. It wasn't just an emergency. Sam's mind raced as she traced her fingers across the control board, her instincts firing faster than her thoughts. The Blackbird Alpha wasn't just making an emergency landing. It was likely carrying something far more critical and far more dangerous than any of them could imagine. Before she could act, the senior controllers, who had, for the most part, ignored her throughout the day, finally took notice. Lieutenant Davis, looking slightly more frantic than usual, rushed to her station. He looked down at the radar, then back at Sam, his usual condescending attitude replaced by something else entirely. "Carter," Davis barked. "What the hell are you doing? You cleared Blackbird Alpha without even checking the logs. We don't know what they're carrying." "I don't have time for the logs," Sam snapped back, her voice steady. "They're going dark, and we need to get them in. Now." Davis recoiled, his face a mix of confusion and frustration. "Don't get smart with me. You have no idea what's at stake here." But Sam had already turned her attention back to the airspace. She was in the zone now, everything else falling away as she monitored the craft's descent. The weight of the situation hit her full force, but she didn't let it show. The Blackbird was heading straight for the emergency landing strip, but the closer it got, the more Sam realized just how serious things were. The last words Davis had spoken echoed in her head. "You have no idea what's at stake here." He was right. She didn't. But what she didn't know was that she couldn't afford to let doubt take over. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. With a calm but resolute voice, Sam spoke into the mic again, cutting through the static. "Blackbird Alpha, this is Airfield 23. Emergency landing strip cleared. Follow the course, land on your mark. Over." The response came quickly this time. "Acknowledged, Airfield 23. Landing in 3 minutes. Over." A tense silence fell over the tower as Sam's fingers hovered over the controls. She watched the radar closely, the black dots blinking furiously as they closed in on the strip. She didn't need anyone's approval anymore. Sam knew she was doing the right thing. Seconds later, the sound of a jet's engine screeched across the airways, signaling the final stretch of Blackbird Alpha's descent. Sam's heart was in her throat, but her hands didn't shake. As the jet neared the ground, she turned to Davis, who had remained silent during the entire exchange. His face was pale, his eyes wide. For the first time, Sam saw the flicker of respect in his gaze. And when the jet landed safely, there was no applause, no grand gestures of congratulations. Just this silent recognition that Sam Carter had taken control of a situation that could have spiraled out of control. But the real story wasn't in the landing. It was in the decision that led up to it. Sam had done what she had to do. And when the dust settled, she knew things would never be the same. The hum of the airfield seemed louder than usual as Sam stared at the empty air traffic control screens, the weight of her actions pressing down on her chest. The adrenaline from the Blackbird Alpha emergency had barely worn off, but now, it was replaced by an overwhelming sense of something bigger, a feeling that she had just stepped into a world she wasn't fully prepared for. She had done everything by the book, cleared the flight, kept the airspace clear, made the right call at the right time. And Blackbird Alpha had landed safely. But no one in the tower said a word. No congratulations, no recognition. It was as though the entire event had been nothing more than a routine landing. And yet, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the jet powered down on the tarmac, a black SUV, unmarked, appeared at the edge of the runway. The figures inside it were wearing dark suits, their faces impassive as they stepped out and began walking toward the plane with precision. Sam watched from the tower, trying to make sense of it, but she couldn't. Who were they? What were they doing here? Just then, Lieutenant Davis stormed into the tower, his face a mixture of frustration and confusion. He didn't even look at Sam, but he didn't need to. His words hit harder than any glance. "Carter, what the hell was that?" Davis snapped. "You cleared a high-priority asset without authorization. You don't make those decisions here. I told you we don't know what's on that plane. Do you think they just let anyone touch it?" "I followed the protocol," Sam replied, her voice calm but firm. "I cleared the landing based on their request. Ground control approved it. If you have a problem with that, you need to talk to them." Davis narrowed his eyes, the weight of his authority still very much present, but the air around him felt different now. He had no immediate answer, no defense to her logic. But there was something else, something deeper, in the way his jaw tightened. Sam could feel it. The fear in the room was palpable. And it wasn't because of her. It was because of what had just happened. As Sam sat back down at her station, she could feel the eyes of the other controllers on her, not with the scorn or dismissal they had shown earlier, but with something far more dangerous. Fear. They were afraid of what had just happened. They didn't understand it. And, deep down, neither did Sam. The figures in suits reached the plane, their bodies obscured by the jet's massive wings as they began unloading something. The secrecy, the level of precaution, it all felt wrong. She turned to Davis, who was now staring at the live footage of the landing, his fingers frozen over the console. "What do you think is going on?" Sam asked, her voice steady but laced with urgency. She needed answers, but she wasn't sure where to turn. "Nothing good," Davis muttered under his breath, his eyes flicking nervously toward the black SUV. He reached for the radio. "Control, this is Airfield 23. What's the deal with Blackbird Alpha? They're on the ground, and there's something going on. Over." The silence on the other end was deafening. It was as though the air had thickened, and in that moment, Sam realized they weren't just monitoring Blackbird Alpha, they were being watched. "Airfield 23, a new voice crackled over the radio. It wasn't ground control. It wasn't any of the usual frequencies. It was something different. "This is Delta 6. You have not been cleared for any further interaction with Blackbird Alpha. Do not approach the vehicle or personnel. Over." The message was cold, authoritative. It was a command, not a request. And it hit Sam like a ton of bricks. She had been pulled into something much larger than she had anticipated. Something far beyond the confines of her air traffic duties. "Do you understand, Airfield 23? The voice repeated. "I understand," Sam replied, her throat dry. She knew what was coming next. No one in this room would be allowed to ask questions. The secrecy surrounding this mission was too high stakes. She was just the controller, the one who did what she was told. Nothing more. Davis turned to her, his expression dark. "Get this straight, Carter. You've already done your job. But that's it. From here on out, you stay out of it. You hear me?" Sam nodded, but her mind was racing. What was going on behind those walls? What was so secretive about this landing that made even the higher-ups this nervous? She didn't have time to dwell on it before the airwaves crackled again. This time, it wasn't the Delta 6 voice. It was someone Sam recognized, though only faintly. The voice was sharp, clipped, with an authority she had never heard before. "Airfield 23, this is Commander Hayes. You have made a critical error. We'll be taking over from here. Stand down, and do not attempt to initiate contact with any personnel involved. You're being relieved of your post. Do not discuss this with anyone." "Understood." Sam's heart pounded in her chest. A command to stand down? She had done everything right. Everything was by the book. Why were they pushing her out? "Yes, sir," Sam replied, though she had no idea what was going on. "Understood." The radio went silent again, but Sam could still feel the weight of those words hanging in the air, like a threat that no one had dared to voice until now. Her control over the situation had slipped away, and now it was gone entirely. She turned to face Davis again, but he was already packing up his things, preparing to leave as if nothing had happened. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge the magnitude of what had just transpired. It was as if he had become part of a machine that didn't stop to ask questions. It just moved, blindly. As Sam gathered her own things and prepared to leave the tower, she couldn't help but wonder how much more of this she would take. How many more decisions would be made without her input, without her understanding? Was she just a pawn in someone else's game? Or was there something bigger here that no one had told her about?